There is a fine line separating salesmen from conman. Some of them sell you stocks, bonds, and other financial hoaxes, while others go above and beyond to sell you the Eiffel Tower. In this video, we'll be getting to know how one man sold off the Eiffel Tower not just once, but twice. Stick around until the end of the video to see just how deep this deception goes, and how you could set yourself up for success as well. Count Victor Lustig or Robert V. Miller, depending on who you asked, live a life of many names. With over 47 fake aliases throughout his entire conning career, he has weaved the perfect web of lies and deceit that his real identity is still being contested to this very day. And he doesn't make answering that any easier, with dozens of fake passports and forged documents supporting each alias that he's been tied to. If there's one true and consistent thing about Victor Lustig, it's that he isn't to be trusted. Victor, despite all his deceit, was actually a descendant of royalty. He would reveal his royal blood in prison interviews, recalling his Austria-Hungary descent and growing up in the village town of Hostenet. His father, going by the name of Ludwig, was the mayor of this small town and would be the source of his immense wealth. It's a fairy tale story that is too good to be true, and for good reason. A recent discovery of prison papers actually revealed that Victor's parents were actually among the peasants of that same town, growing up in a stone house and having to steal just so he could survive. You could say that the great Count Victor was born with no other choice than to live a life of theft and dishonesty. But let's not forget that we're in the 1920s, a time when theft and dishonesty could jumpstart your career. Using his wit and charm, Victor slowly climbed up the criminal ladder to become a criminal so smooth that Michael Jackson might as well have written the song about him. At his prime, Victor was a man shrouded in the mystery and elegance that encapsulated his persona of a quiet, charming count. And this charm was all he needed to commit some of the most dumbfounding crimes. The crime. Victor was born into a life of desperation. While being born into a poor family left him with no other choice but to commit crime, becoming an expert in it was definitely his choice. Victor studied every sleight of hand trick there was. From pickpockets to burglaries, Victor had it all. Victor started with the easy pickings, scamming the rich passengers of transatlantic ships, the perfect crime considering none of them were quick enough to realize that they were being conned in the first place. These scams were enough to turn heads at the local police department as Victor slowly made a name for himself as a smooth hustler. But while card tricks and smooth talking were cool, it was just a stepping stone for Victor. Victor knew that he had enough charm to convince someone that the sky was actually red. He just needed to step up his theatrics. One of his more successful hustles came in the form of a small wooden box with moving parts called the Romanian money box, which he claimed was able to perfectly duplicate banknotes using a special element called radium that was stored inside the box. That's right, Victor was basically selling the equivalent of cheat codes in real life, and people were believing him. With the help of some charm and theatrics, who could blame them? But of course, these small hustles were nothing compared to his biggest scam ever, selling the Eiffel Tower, the sale. When you think of Paris, you think of the Eiffel Tower, a huge monument that was built and named after Gustave Eiffel in 1889. This work of art is something both Parisians and tourists love to gawk at, but one man's treasure is another man's trash, and Victor was here to collect. The plan was simple and quite similar to every other con he'd been doing, but this of course had to be much more complicated. The Eiffel Tower was commissioned and owned by the city of Paris, which meant that all his documents had to be official. To pass off as a government official, he commissioned stationery that carried the official French government seal. Living a life of crime meant that you had connections, and fraudulent documents like this were just routine for him. Now that he had the bait, it was time to dangle it in front of his potential victims. He wrote letters to the top brass of the French scrap metal industry, inviting them to the luxurious Hôtel de Crillon for a meeting. Securing a room for yourself at this 5-star hotel wasn't cheap, but to earn big, you have to spend big. He had to commit to his bid. So in 1925, on the day of meeting with some of Paris's biggest scrap companies, Victor opened with a proposition that would send them into a frenzy. He would tell them that the Eiffel Tower was becoming too costly in terms of maintenance and too poorly built to be open to the public, and so the French government decided to sell it to the highest bidder. The con was so successful that the eventual winner of the bidding had even made an under-the-table bribe just to secure the deal. And as soon as Victor got his money, he fled to Austria. By the time the authorities and companies involved caught on to the scam, he had already disappeared. If Victor was already turning heads with his scams before, this scam put all eyes on him. And soon enough, this attention would be his downfall. The catch. After the sale of the Eiffel Tower, Victor Lustig started a cat-and-mouse chase with the authorities. Victor had graduated from selling money printers to printing fake money that looked and felt like the real thing. This amount of money put him in the crosshairs of Peter A. Rubano, a Secret Service agent that was already known for his capture of other notorious gangsters. Peter Rubano was an expert at catching criminals, but Victor was an expert at running away. Every time Peter had Victor at the palm of his hands, Victor would slip right through his fingers using his entire bag of tricks. If he were caught in a hotel, he could slip through as a bellhop. If you caught him in a bathroom, he could waltz away as a janitor. This chase was something you would see out of a movie or a cartoon. But reality would soon catch up with Victor, because on May 10, 1935, Peter Rubano would finally cuff this wise guy. But not for long. No man could hold a snake like Victor Lustig for long, and he would escape from his holding facility just a few months later, posing as a window cleaner on the way out. That freedom wouldn't last long, however, as he was soon caught again just weeks later, this time for good. Victor Lustig was 46 years old when he was found guilty of fraud and, of course, counterfeit banknote production. He was sentenced to 20 years in Alcatraz prison, a sentence that was sadly too long for Victor to handle. Victor was often complaining about his health, requesting to be moved to a medical facility, a request that fell on deaf ears and brushed off as nothing more than a lie. Only this time, he was telling the truth. Victor Lustig passed away on March 11, 1947, due to severe pneumonia. Although Victor had passed, his legacy lives on as one of the smoothest con men on Earth, and he wanted to pass his skills on through his 10 commandments.
And the Lord's 11th commandment, Moses gets to be first in line at the buffet.
What? Oh, seriously?
I know, you guys, it's so lame, but that's what it says.
Victor Lustig was not a humble man, far from it. He was so good at hustling targets that he could have written the rules about it, and so he did. These are the rules that Victor Lustig followed. Number 1. Be a patient listener. Number 2. Never look bored. Number 3. Wait for the other person to reveal any political opinions, and then agree with them. Number 4. Let the other person reveal religious views, then have the same ones. Number 5. Hint at sex talk, but don't follow it up unless the other fellow shows a strong interest. Number 6. Never discuss illness unless some special concern is shown. Number 7. Never pry into a person's personal circumstances. Number 8. Never boast, just let your importance be quietly obvious. Number 9. Never go untidy. Number 10. Never get drunk. All this summarized boils down to one agenda: act important and make your target feel as important and as smart as you are. If it worked for the rich and the French, it'll work for your friends too. Just don't come running to us when you're hauled off to Alcatraz.